Hello and welcome to another fun-filled nonsense retrospective. I'm your host as always, Rick. Joining me equally as always is Devon.
Ooh.
Ah, yeah, it's the first spooky one, ain't it? Yeah, welcome to Spooktober, and we're doing things that are slightly horror-themed. Today we're doing something a little bit new and different. We're doing an armchair booking of a fantasy horror crossover, but before we get too far into that, let's go with the good old time-honored tradition of the nonsense asinine hypotheticals. What have you got for me today?
Congratulations, Rick. You've been bestowed with a 1 free time pass of a monster fucker permit. What monster are you fucking? The caveat being, it can't be, can't be just a vampire. That's just a sexy lady.
And I can't just pick Sue because that's cheating. That's all the monster girls.
Yeah, I'm talking gothic version of horror, not fucking anime ooh-woo monster girl waifus.
Yeah, it's probably going to have to be some kind of weird creature, ain't it?
You have to fuck them in their weird form.
Yeah, the hybrid form, not the pure animal form, because that's just literal bestiality. Would a werewolf be the best one? Weird foxes, not very common. Weird cheetahs, I think they're just made up to be an anime thing. Yeah, probably would have to just be a basic bitch werewolf. How about you? What you picking?
I mean, again, we're going for the gothic extreme version, so therefore I think mermaid gets a pass.
Okay, the one that kind of bursts into sea foam when she gets cooked.
I mean, I guess if you want to word it that way, I'm thinking of the ones that are slightly like they've got gills on their sides, so they're not conventionally attractive, but they're still better than most things.
Yeah, the siren-y ones.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it. So, yeah, I feel like I'm abiding by my own rules by using that as a caveat.
Yeah. And, still fish fanny.
I mean, who gives a fuck? Like, worst case scenario is you get a blowjob and they spit it out in the sea and it fertilizes them. I don't know. Like, it's one of those weird ones where it's always like, you got a choice to make. If you fuck a mermaid, it's like, what are you going to do? It's like, well, there's plenty you can do. You just do stuff that doesn't involve the hole.
Yeah. Or you just get over that hang-up.
Well, it's not so much a hang-up as it's biologically impossible.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that hole is big enough for fish eggs and nothing else. And if your cock's small enough as a fish egg, then, like, you have my pity and sympathy. What about you, Rick? Do you have a question for me today?
My one is just a simple one. You get a book full of all the nice things that people have ever said about you and behind your back, but they also includes all the negative and mean things that people have ever said behind your back. Do you take it?
No.
Okay. You don't take it. You're not interested at all.
It's not. It's less interested in, like, if you're saying it behind my back, it's worthless knowledge.
Sure.
That's how I've always taken that in stride. I've had people come up to me and say, "Oh, so and so said this behind your back," and I'm like, I don't care. Like, it's not necessarily. I mean, it's entirely not nice stuff, and it's always just like, I don't care. If they're not saying it to my face, they can fuck off.
Yeah.
Out of sight, out of mind, and all that shit. And I know you're saying it with the caveat of, oh, here's all the nice things as well. And like, here's the shocker, guys: is a lot of people will say negative things about you behind your back, and very rarely positive. Yeah,
I feel that. I'd take the deal just for the morbid curiosity.
I mean, I've always prided myself in the fact, Rick, that when it comes to my friends, at least, I never say anything about them behind their backs I wouldn't say behind their face. To their face.
Yeah.
It did come up with a very funny thing where you're probably part of the conversation, actually, where I called one of us a useless cunt while we were playing a video game because I was very annoyed, and they went, "Oh, so I wonder what sort of things you say behind my back," and I said something along the lines of, "I've never said anything behind your back I've not said to your face," and they went, "So you've called me a useless cunt before behind my back?" And I went, "Yeah, I guess I have." Anyway.
Yeah. Like, in defense, they were probably being one.
Well, it's one of those.
Yeah. But yes, today we are mashing up 2 horror franchises and turning the crank and seeing what pops out. And for me, I had to go on to a good old website to refresh my memory on what horror movies count as horror, and I looked up the top 50 according to Empire magazine and realised I've only actually seen like 6 of them. So,
well, we should probably
disqualify quite a lot of them.
I was going to say, we should probably add as a caveat at the beginning of this that neither of us are massive horror fans. As you could probably tell by the fact that our theme for this month's reviews is Scooby fucking Doo.
Yeah. Yeah, we tried to do Hannibal couple last year, and like after the second one, it kind of fell through.
Our source of visuals let us down, which ironically I have solved this year, but we're doing Scooby-Doo, so fuck it.
Yeah. Yeah. So the things that I have disqualified from my own list are Jaws, The Shining, Saw, and Silence of the Lambs. These are all decent films, but I didn't see them playing well with each other.
Okay, that's very interesting.
More a case of like any one of these would dominate the others.
Okay.
So, like, if you had Hannibal Lecter, he would just dominate The Shining.
Yeah, but here's the problem: is The Shining is the Shining would be the setting of isolation, because The Shining isn't really about the characters so much as this is what isolation does to you.
Yeah, and Saw is just a weird one to try and mesh with anything else, in my opinion, because it's all about its own kind of miniature setting where they just have the premise of person gets kidnapped by this psychopath and gets forced to do the worst thing, and possibly if they survive come out better for it, or they just die.
Well, allow me to tell you for free, Rick, that you've mentioned both of the franchises that I'll be using in my backup idea if my first idea is rejected.
Okie dokie. Jaws and Saws. Saw Jaws. You get put in Jaws' ocean and you have to live. What I ended up picking was 28 Days Later and Alien.
Okay, so 28 Days Later is a zombie film, but they're not zombies, they're infected. And the whole gimmick is that you're the zombie disease virus that makes you the weird undead bullshit super strong creature takes place 28 days after you've been infected, or am I misremembering?
Nah. The 28 Days Later is that the main character awakens 28 days after being put into a coma.
In which case, I'm getting that film confused with something else.
Yeah, so it's got the infection is incredibly quick. We get to see it like it's unfathomably virulent is the infection in 28 Days Later. Like there's one point where a dead zombie is just dripping blood, and a guy just walks around, looks up, a drop goes into his eye, and that's curtains for him. He's got like moments to live before he becomes an infected himself and tries to eat his own daughter.
Fun. So because I'm clearly getting this movie confused with something else, I'm going to have to ask you then, how do the infected act? Are they typical zombies, they're lumbering and slow, or are they super fast, basically superhuman cannibal bastards?
They are very fast, and they're mostly stupid. But they just kind of go and try and they try and burst things down rather than like using like doors or anything.
Sure, so they're like finer motor skills that kind of gone, and they rely solely on basically adrenaline to keep them going. That's kind of the premise. Yeah,
and they can use their fingers for tearing you apart.
Well, yeah, but that's zombies in general.
Yeah, it's they're like wolf kind of mental state, like rabies. It's very much like rabies.
Okay, sure.
In fact, I think that was the inspiration for what they turned into. Like you got the rabid animal, but as a human.
That's what rabies does.
And then the thing to do with Alien is we set it in something like an alien, a human colony somewhere away from Earth that's probably rather remote, rather small. And when this infection has been going for an amount of time, the sane response is to quarantine or exterminatus the entire colony, just write it off. So there needs to be some reason why they can't do that. Someone important enough in the story for this not to be the immediate response. So, like, I don't know, a diplomat's child or mistress or something needs to be one of the main characters, part of the main core
well,
group
allow me
that needs to be survivors.
To enlighten you in the Xenoverse universe, because that's going to have to be what you're mismatching this up with. The Wayland Corporation does not care about human life at all, so I'd actually counter that point and say that the virus was probably purposefully spread in this facility to see how it worked and to see if they could use it.
Yeah. I think the only reason that any human might survive is if they're actually part of the Weyland family, or the Yutani family.
Yutani is Predator.
Oh, is Yutani Predator? Okay.
Yeah, so that's why it's Weyland, Yutani, and Alien vs. Predator, because they merged the corporation.
Okay, fair enough.
At least I think. If I'm wrong, I've gotten it the wrong way round, and Yutani is Alien and Weyland is Predator, but I'm pretty sure I got it the right way round.
I'm pretty sure it's Weyland in Alien, and because from now on, it's basically Weyland Yutani the entire time now.
Yeah, that makes sense.
The other thing that's kind of like the unfortunate implications is that in 28 Days Later they do find there's a hope spot where they find a military installation that's still got some uninfected people. Unfortunately, it's a bit of a banana republic, and the commander wants to just turn over all of the female survivors to the soldiers.
Okay.
Which is a bit awful. Especially since one of them is underage as well. Yeah. He becomes the actual villain of the movie.
Yeah, no, so it's nice to see that in real life and in fiction, women are always treated as, you will be breeder now.
Yeah, and that's why he becomes the main villain, and it's rather cathartic when he gets torn apart.
I imagine. This doesn't sound like a film I want to watch.
Well, fair enough. Like, I'm not super into most horror anyway, so...
Oh, I'm not saying your crossover idea, I'm saying the original 28 Days Later.
Oh, yeah, I remember kind of hating it when it came out, also because the scariest thing about the film is when a car alarm goes off, because that's the only thing that made me jump.
So yeah, how do you actually introduce the alien element to this?
Well, maybe that the infection is just the very, very primordial form of the alien parasite.
Fuck off.
And after multiple iterations, you end up with xenomorphs instead.
Yeah, no, fuck off. That's a terrible idea.
Sure.
I'm sorry. So, there's not going to be any xenomorphs in this film.
Oh yeah, there is. It's similar to Prometheus, where they show up at the end.
Okay, cool. So the worst thing. No, you can't you can't do this, because one, it's been done, and two, it's one of the worst things you can fucking do is go, oh, when's the alien going to show up? Right at the end as the stinger, because fuck you.
Nah, okay. So let's workshop a little bit around this. So the other thing about 28 Days Later is that it's set after the beginning of the problem. So a lot of people are already dead by the time the story happens. So maybe the aliens are already just prowling around this colony, just picking off whoever exists. And the biggest problem that the survivors have is that the size of their group. Because in a group, there's always going to be a weak link, and eventually they just get picked off one by one.
Okay, but here's the problem: is then you're putting too much emphasis on the xenomorph threat.
Yeah.
Like the problem is you've got these two contrasting elements, and both of those elements are trying to essentially, the horror from the film is, oh, we're damned if we go here and we're damned if we go there, but like there's no real mixing of the elements. It's just, here's two threats, and one is going to be a bigger threat than the other. You know? Yeah.
Well, I'm guessing what I'm thinking about in this is, like, if you make it mostly a xenomorph threat and then mostly the plot of 28 Days, where you've got to try and survive the 28 days way against xenomorphs. Because how they win in the end of that is by finding somewhere that's so remote that the zombies starve before they get to them.
But you're working in a universe that has space travel.
Yeah.
Which kind of fucks that up.
Yeah. Their only way to live happily in this is to live an entire life on this colony and eventually die of old age without being extracted from the place and infecting the rest of the universe, which is probably going to be the downer stinger that someone just does come, tries to rescue people out of the goodness of their heart, and ends up becoming a transmitter.
I'm very confused. I don't understand. You've made a leap here at some point, and I've missed that leap.
Oh well. Well, I've rabbited on long enough. I think it's a good time to ask you about your movies.
I love how I'm like, there's a slight hole because there's been a leap in logic that you've not explained, or potentially I didn't see, and that's fine. I poke it a little bit to try and get you to explain it just a bit more, and you're like, let's move on.
Yep.
All right, then.
Well, we can always swing back.
We're not. We're going to forget.
Sure.
I know what this podcast is like, Rick.
Yeah, fair enough.
I'm going to ask you at the end, so let's go back to your thing, and you'll be like, what was my thing? And like, I don't remember, because the leap of logic, the gap in knowledge is me. I can't see the leap. And then if you forget the leap, then we're never going to come back to it, are we?
Sure. So what leap of logic are you trying to understand?
Well, because you skipped a whole part where I said, the problem is there's space travel, and then you said, yeah, that's the problem. And I'm like, what? What do you mean that's the problem?
Yeah, so the space travel is basically not going to exist until someone gets there to rescue people.
But they had to get to the planet somehow, Rick. You said this is a remote planet in the first place, because it's got xenomorphs on it.
Yeah, so if it's remote, then the way that people get to it is by them getting to a communications array or something, sending out a message to ask for help. And then someone comes to help.
Why would you set up a colony like this?
I don't know, mining.
But it's a Wayland installation. They don't do mining.
Well, whatever else they do, like...
They research dangerous shit, which is why I said the potential reasoning for the virus being there in the first place, the 28-day virus. But you've written that out as saying, oh, that's not actually going to be the thing. The thing's going to be the plot of 28 Days Later, where they have to outlast the xenomorphs / a disease. By staying remote. I'm just saying, like, as an Alien fan, it doesn't mesh with the Alien side of things. It might mesh perfectly with 28 Days Later, but I've not seen that shit.
Sure, okay. But I don't know. I guess it would just be you'd have to find someone to contact who is not just Wayland Corporation, who would just disavow all knowledge of human life.
But that's the problem, Rick. That's the problem in all Alien films. Is Wayland / Raylan-Yutani are a dirtbag corporation that don't care about human life.
Mm-hmm. And they're pretty much the only ones that kind of matter, really, as far as we've seen. But yeah, fair enough. So let's throw over to you. What are your movies? What have you put together, and what have you got out of it?
Alrighty. Okay, first things first. This first one might get disqualified because one of them has horror elements, but one could argue it's not horror. It's also not a movie.
Okay.
I didn't realise that we had the caveat of had to be a crossover between movies.
Sure.
So the first franchise is Hannibal, aka Silence of the Lambs, aka Anthony Hopkins version.
Sure.
/ Death Note.
Ha! Okay, I like this.
So I'm going to ask you now, are you going to allow Death Note as horror?
I'm allowing it because I like how this is already kind of going. I'd like to see what you're thinking about it.
Okay, because this has been allowed, my other option was going to be Hannibal, the Mads Mikkelsen version / Saw.
Sure.
Earlier on when you were going, I don't know how to make any of these mix, I'm like, oh, you lack imagination, sir.
What, so like getting Mads Mikkelsen Hannibal to solve the Saw murders?
No, better than that. I would have had like Will Graham be a victim of Saw, or go missing, and Hannibal clocks that it's the Saw murderer, and he'd have to basically a race against the clock for him to solve it to save Will Graham. Because I appreciate that you didn't watch all of Hannibal. I also didn't watch all of Hannibal, but it's very clear from the get-go that Hannibal has a soft spot for Will Graham.
Yeah. That he's kind of the Clarice of that version. In that you told me that they were originally going to have Clarice, but they ended up just giving all of her storylines to Will Graham as well.
Yeah, they were going to have Clarice show up in season 3, and then they just decided, nah, that's dumb. And to be honest with you, it was probably the right decision, because, they built this series around the relationship of Will Graham and Hannibal, and it would have been really weird to throw another character who essentially gets groomed by Hannibal into the mix.
Yeah.
Anyway, I digress. Yeah, so Hannibal or Silence of the Lambs / Death Note. I think you'd have to set it before Hannibal got caught.
Sure.
So there's that, and I think you'd have to change the Death Note location from Japan to America, specifically the state in which Hannibal resides.
Sure. Okay.
So I mean, still have all. Well, no, that doesn't work really, doesn't it? No, I think it would have to be Hannibal would have to go to Japan because
or a mutually unfamiliar place for both of them.
No, because then that throws too many wrenches in the mix. It changes too much of the formula.
Sure.
Like, Hannibal's pretty well off, and he's a pretty wealthy person anyway. He can just do trips like, I'm going to go to Japan for a couple of months, and he'd fob it off as, I'm going to learn some rejuvenating techniques passed down from the ancient Zen masters. But in reality, he wanted to try some Japanese cuisine.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he just happens to be in the area while the Death Note starts kicking off. Random ne'er-do-wells start getting killed off by Light. Obviously, Hannibal doesn't really pay much attention until he sees a certain broadcast by a certain L.
That's calling him out and just calling out Kira and making sure that Kira knows that L is on his tail.
Yeah, so I think that would really tickle Hannibal, as there's some force at play that can make random people have random heart attacks. What is this? This is weird. I think it would pique his interest.
And it means that there is a serial killer, and he normally, well, he seems to get a bit of a hard on for other serial killers and finding out what makes them tick.
He very much likes to manipulate other serial killers. Like, we see it in both versions. Like in Hannibal the TV show, he really does like doing it. Like we saw in the episode that we watched for the podcast, where he met the other cannibal and gave him a courtesy call saying, "This is a courtesy call, they're onto you, run."
Yeah.
Obviously it didn't work, but whatever. And in the Silence of the Lambs Anthony Hopkins version of Hannibal Lecter, very specifically the Red Dragon film,
yes,
he gets the Tooth Fairy to attack Will Graham. So, you know, I mean, he does that in Hannibal the TV show as well, come to think of it. It's very weird in the Hannibal TV show because they update it and they make him dress like a fucking idiot. Like, he wears he wears bones from a fucking museum when he attacks Will Graham. Okay. It's fucking bizarre.
Yeah, that is weird.
It's very cool visually, but it's stupid. But yeah, so where was I? Yeah, and this is where I hit a bit of my stumbling block, because you'd have to have Hannibal Lecter meet Light, but I don't know how that would happen, because Hannibal's pretty smart, but they also make it very abundantly clear that Light is smart. Like, Light wouldn't just let a random person approach him, especially not someone the age and sophistication and westernness of Hannibal.
Yeah. Well, there's also the possibility that they just see each other somewhere, and it's probably someone like Ryuk that looks at Hannibal's lifespan and realizes something is going on with that guy.
I don't think that's a thing Shinigami can see. Shinigami can see how long people are meant to live for and their names, but it doesn't say what kind of kill count they rack up.
No, but there's a potential for something. Like, we don't see a lot of murderers in Death Note.
Do you know what? What might actually be an interesting twist is there is a Shinigami that just follows Hannibal all the time because they have to constantly write names in the book, in their book. But,
yes.
But Hannibal's not aware of this because Hannibal's just a guy, essentially just a guy.
Yeah. So, like, there being a Shinigami that's dedicated to each murderer. Like, every serial killer has their own Shinigami because they just need a handler, as it were.
Yeah. I think that would work. And I think it would be great if Hannibal picks up the Death Note at some point and sees his Shinigami and is just like, oh, wow, that's interesting. I want to see a conversation between Anthony Hopkins, Hannibal Lecter, and Ryuk, because I think it would be funny.
Yeah. Especially as Ryuk ends up getting contorted when he's being denied apples.
Well, it would just be so, because Ryuk is rude.
Yeah.
Hannibal Lecter
That's the one way to get on. It's the one way to get on Hannibal Lecter's bad side, is being rude. One way to get on his good side is to be polite to him and show him respect. And
it would be implied that if he picks up the Death Note, he'd be able to see Ryuk, but he'd also be able to see his own, because you can just see Shinigami once you picked up the Death Note, right?
Yeah, you can see all of them.
So yeah, that would be I want Hannibal Lecter's personal Shinigami to be dressed like a sous chef.
This is Gordon Ramsay.
Oh yeah, he finally gets to talk to his fucking Shinigami, and the Shinigami just criticizes his cooking technique.
It's fucking raw. Yeah, it's Gordon Ramsay. Yeah,
I don't want it to be Gordon Ramsay, but yeah, I do want it to be a chef that is a little bit critical of Hannibal's cooking techniques.
yeah, fair enough.
But yeah,
oh man,
I don't know how the thing would end. Like, I don't think the story would end or alter too much. I think Hannibal would part ways with Light very quickly, because at the end of the day, Light is arrogant, but Hannibal's arrogant, but he doesn't know he's arrogant. But you can see when other people are being arrogant.
Yeah, it's one of those those like catch-22 things of he can see the inconsistencies, but he can't see it in himself.
Yeah. See, I think they'd meet. I think we'd have some fun interactions, but I think they'd part ways. I think the problem would be, I don't see why Light wouldn't write Hannibal's name in the book if he found out his name.
Yeah, I think it would be a race against the rules at that point of trying to get Light to forget about Hannibal, because there are ways to do that with how the Death Notes work, in that you can just like remove memories when you lose possession of the note.
Okay. So if Hannibal picked up the book to have that conversation, those conversations we want to see, then that would kind of work, wouldn't it?
Yeah, and he might have to swap his book with his own Shinigami's book so that Light gets the other book, so he doesn't have his own book and his own memories anymore.
Would that be allowed? Would that work?
I think that's how they do it with certain ones, where because I know Light surrenders his memories of Death Notes at some point, and in what ends up being, like, in my opinion, the best arc, where Light is essentially a good guy for like a third of the series, and then he picks up the note at the end again.
I think we watched very different versions of the show, because that lasts about 2 episodes.
2 episodes? Okay.
Yeah.
It feels like it lasts a lot longer than that.
It's about 2 episodes, and then as soon as he gets the book back, all of his memories come back, and we get the all according to Keikaku.
Yeah, Keikakudori, Keikakudori.
Translator's note, Keikaku means plan.
Yep.
Yeah, it's one of those where like we'd have to really sit down and work out the nitty-gritty of certain interactions, because Hannibal Lecter could just be smart enough not to give his real name to people. Like, he does it all the time.
Yeah.
And we know that Light never takes the deal to be able to just see people's names. But I still think one of my favorite episode of Death Note is still the lady who's married to the police officer that goes missing.
Yeah, she's one of the most dangerous ones, in that if Light didn't kill her immediately, she would have very definitely been L before L.
Yeah, like, it's just such a good episode, from giving Light the fake name and Ryuk pissing himself laughing to that final shot of her going up the gallows. It's awful feeling.
Yeah.
Yeah, very well done, very tasteful. But yeah, I want to see this.
Yeah,
and I don't think there'd be a lot of horror involved in this crossover.
Yeah, it's more of a psychological roller coaster than just straight up horror in the traditional sense.
Yeah, you'd also need a smarter person than I to write this episode or movie, because it's all well and good as I want to see these two characters interact, but you'd have to have someone smart enough to make them interact. Yeah,
and I'm annoyed that I didn't think of Death Note, because I really loved it. I used to really love Death Note when I was a much younger edgelord.
Well, it's a good anime. During a generation of fucking endless shonens.
You had something that was a little bit more higher stakes but lower octane.
And it stands out even to this day.
Yeah. In that you can have this like slow-paced scene where someone's describing a thought process, and you're just like, yeah, bitch, get him.
Like, I watched this very late. I watched this in like 2018.
Ah, yeah, fair enough.
Alright, wait, was it 2000? I watched it not long after I met you.
Okay.
How long have we known each other? Like 10 years?
When The Taken King came out.
Yeah, you you use Taken King as a visual point. I use when I started my job as a starting point.
Yeah. So like 2014 or something.
Yeah, so 10 years ish.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a
little bit after Dragon Age Inquisition.
Fuck off. Oh no, it hasn't been 10 years.
It's nearly.
Jeez. Anyway, but yeah, I like Death Note. Even to this day, it stands out. That and Steins Gate.
Yeah, I love Steins Gate.
Yeah.
Like, possibly the number one god tier anime in my opinion.
Here's my problem: is my taste in anime is actually trash. So.
Oh yeah, like mine is definitely trash. Like the number of times I will just go into a season and go, what's the isekai trash this season, and then I'll just watch 4 of them.
Yeah, you like isekai trash. I like harem trash.
Yeah, I mean, quite a lot of the time the two do meet.
I don't. Here's the thing: is I detest isekai, because every good isekai has immediately gone downhill after about episode 10.
Oh yeah, like a lot of the time it goes downhill after the premise is solved. Like, we talk about Shield Hero all the time for this, in that, like, it needs to stop after season 1, and if you stop at season 1, then you have a good time, and if you watch the rest of it, you just it's mid at best.
And that's our preview for our Isekai dissection episode.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm not as high on your idea as I am on my idea, but that's kind of a given the bias.
Well, I'm the same. Like, I like your movie better than mine.
But here's the problem, Rick, is my idea is essentially I want these two characters to meet and have an argument.
Yeah, whereas mine doesn't really have characters. Like, I've the only defined character, as it were, is the existence of xenomorphs, and they're threats, not characters.
They really are. Like, I know I rant and rave about James Cameron all the time, but the smartest thing he did is he looked at Alien 1 and he went, okay, so the horror element is not knowing what the design is, and we now know what the alien looks like, so the second movie is now going to be an action movie instead of a horror.
Yeah.
And he did much the same thing with Terminator.
Yeah, and I'd say that Terminator 2 is one of the prime examples of a movie that's better than the original.
I can't remember anything from Terminator 1 apart from I require your clothes, your boots, and your motorcycle.
The Terminator gets crushed in a crusher, and what the earliest words that said in Terminator 1 is just, what the hell, goddamn son of a bitch.
Okay, Terminator 2's better.
Oh, yeah.
I'd argue Alien 1 is better than Alien 2, but that's because I think Alien 1 is one of arguably the best sci-fi movie of all time.
Yeah.
I know you disagree with that, and we've got another friend that will fight tooth and nail that I'm wrong on it, and that's fine. But in my opinion...
Sure.
I won't name names, but you know who they are.
Star Wars.
No, I meant the person, not the franchise, not the film.
Well, Star Wars isn't really sci-fi anyway, it's just space opera.
But
I still love it to bits.
Which is a subsection of sci-fi. I think if someone argues Star Wars isn't sci-fi, they're kidding themselves.
Oh, yeah. Like, it's not hard sci-fi, but it is sci-fi.
Sci-fi by Wycon, or whatever the fuck it is. That Star Wars thing. Oh, that Star Wars thing where it's like the deaf droids from Starship Trooper versus the gay robots from Star Wars.
Yeah, buy Mon Sci-Fi Con.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I absolutely love that fucking skit of fucking C-3PO getting beaten the shit out of reaching to tag R2 and R2 just pisses off.
Yeah, he just leaves.
Oh, Jesus Christ. Okay, anyway, I think we should wrap up, Rick.
Yeah. There's not really a good or a bad thing we should talk about this. So, there's a comic section down below on YouTube and on Spotify, if Spotify is working again. We hope it is.
Okay, so do you want to know what the issue was?
What was the issue?
It didn't like my MP3 file, but only that one.
Okay.
So
only that one.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it was just really bad timing that a bunch of people also had issues, but the issue didn't affect us. We just had a dodgy MP3 file. So I put it through Audacity and just exported it again, and that fixed the problem.
All right, cool. Give us some comments. Let us know what fantasy booking you would have for this thing. What two horror style things would you mash up? What would they do? How would they interact? And why are we wrong? Why is Jaws the best choice?
Yeah, I mean, I could see an argument of Jaws against, like, Piranha or something, but even then it's a shit premise.
Yeah. Like, it's big. Jaws eats individual piranhas, and all the piranhas eat Jaws. Like, one of them's going to win, and it's not going to be satisfying either way. But yes, if you like the episode, if you've reached this far, you're our favourite people. And yeah, like I say, give us a comment, give us the subscribe if you think we deserve it, and share with anybody who you think might enjoy it. It's going to be a goodbye from me.
And if you're not listening to any of the platforms that have a comment section, you can then send us an email
I forgot about that. Oh yeah, nonsensereviewuk@gmail.com. I forgot about that.
Oh yeah. I think the audience will know that from the fact that you were whispering it twice as I was doing the spiel.
Yeah. The fact that I've already said goodbye as well. Bye, everybody.
Yep, join us for the month of spookiness. We've got some spooky offerings for the retro all month, and we have got Scooby-Doo's for the review, so please join us for those, and we'll see you again next week. Bye, guys.